The outpost was never truly quiet. Even at night, when its few inhabitants retreated to their bunks, the place hummed like a great tired animal refusing to sleep. Air recyclers rattled against the walls, circulation fans moaned, the hydroponic pumps hiccuped as though they were laughing at some joke only machines could understand. To most people, this was irritating, the sort of background noise that wore on nerves until sanity itself began to fray. But to him, it had become familiar, almost comforting, a symphony of dysfunctional technology that, at the very least, reminded him he wasn't entirely alone in the middle of nowhere. He had lived on the fringe outpost for too many years now, a caretaker of things that didn't particularly need caring for. Cargo drones came and went on schedules more reliable than his meals. Research data trickled through the comms arrays, going off to worlds where people actually mattered. He often wondered if anyone even remembered he was stationed here, or if his reports were being read by some poor intern forced to scroll through pages of his notes on algae growth patterns and the stubborn refusal of the mess hall oven to heat evenly. He suspected no one cared. Which was fine. He had become very good at not caring too. The night it happened, he was sitting at his workstation, staring at a mug of something that claimed to be coffee but tasted suspiciously like burnt rubber dissolved in hot water. He was contemplating whether dignity could be maintained if he just drank tea forever instead, when the outpost's perimeter alarm gave a sudden, strangled cough. Not a clear blaring alert, no, his systems were too lazy for that. The alarm hacked and wheezed like an old smoker, then finally decided to take its job seriously, shrieking across the intercom with enough volume to rattle his teeth. "Great," he muttered, shoving back his chair. "Either someone's come to kill me, or another damn rock drifted too close to the fence. Please let it be a rock. Rocks don't usually hold grudges." The console screen flickered with half-legible data. Something had breached the outer perimeter. Small, humanoid. Moving slowly, like it wasn't in any hurry to survive. He frowned, rubbing his eyes, convinced the caffeine substitute had finally fried his brain. Visitors didn't come here. That was the entire point of being stationed at the edge of civilized space. No visitors, no complications, no one to complain about your cooking. And yet, there it was, a moving blip on the scanner, edging closer toward the outpost's main airlock. He considered ignoring it. If he sat still, maybe whatever it was would just go away. That was his usual survival strategy. Unfortunately, the airlock panel lit up a few minutes later with a polite but persistent request for entry. Someone, or something, was asking to be let in. "Right," he sighed, hauling himself up. "Let's go meet the possible murderer. Or worse, the tax collector." The airlock cycled with its usual clunky drama, hissing and clanking as though trying to build suspense. He stood there, arms crossed, trying to look like someone who wasn't easily impressed. Which was hard, considering he was wearing socks with tiny holes in them, and his hair looked like it had lost a fight with static electricity. The inner door slid open. She stood framed in the threshold, the icy wind of the planet swirling around her like an angry spirit. For one stunned heartbeat, he thought she was simply human, a woman, slender, wrapped in a cloak that had clearly seen better days. But then he noticed her ears, long and delicately curved, rising to subtle points that caught the dim light of the corridor. Not prosthetics, not cosmetic surgery, real. Alien. Beautiful in an unsettling, uncanny way. She was shivering, her breath misting in the cold. Her eyes, luminous in the half-dark, fixed on him with something between desperation and command. And then she spoke, her voice trembling but clear enough to cut through the hum of the outpost's failing systems. "Warm me, human." The words were so sudden, so blunt, that he blinked. He blinked again. Then, against every instinct for self-preservation, he laughed. That's usually my line," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "But sure. Come on in before you freeze to death. Just, no stabbing me, please. I bruise easily." She staggered across the threshold with surprising grace for someone who looked moments away from collapsing. The door sealed behind her with a reluctant sigh, cutting off the howl of the wind outside. She clutched the edges of her cloak, trembling as though the very air itself was hostile. Which, he supposed, it probably was, given the outpost's terrible heating system. He jogged to the nearest wall unit, giving it a firm kick until it coughed to life, wheezing warm air into the corridor. "Don't worry," he said, trying to sound reassuring while the heater growled like a dying animal. "This baby puts out a solid 3 degrees of heat per hour. Give it time. It's like hugging a drunk uncle, it's uncomfortable, but it'll keep you alive." She tilted her head at him, her long ears twitching slightly, as if she was trying to parse his words for meaning. For a moment he worried she hadn't understood a thing he'd said, until she gave a small, reluctant laugh. It was faint, but it warmed the air better than the heater did. "Coffee?" he offered, holding up his mug like it was a peace treaty. "Though fair warning, it tastes like liquefied despair." She shook her head, still shivering, her eyes sweeping across the dim corridor. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost fragile. "I do not belong here. But I had nowhere else to go." "Well," he said, ushering her toward the lounge area, really just a glorified corner with 2 chairs and a table that wobbled when you looked at it wrong. "Congratulations. You found the one place in the galaxy where even the vending machines don't belong. You'll fit right in." As she settled awkwardly into one of the chairs, he busied himself with the coffee dispenser, which promptly spat a burst of steam into his face as though mocking him. He muttered threats at it under his breath until it finally produced something vaguely drinkable. He set the steaming mug in front of her, watching as her pale fingers wrapped around it, drawing warmth into her hands. For a long stretch, neither of them spoke. She stared into the mug like it held secrets of the universe. He scratched the back of his neck, wondering how to start a conversation with an alien who had just demanded warmth like it was the most natural thing in the world. "So," he finally said, "do you have a name? Or should I just call you the woman who terrified me at my own front door?" Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed downcast. "You may call me what you wish." "Oh, that's dangerous," he said, leaning back. "You don't want me naming things. I once named a drone Gerald, and now everyone calls it Gerald even though the manual clearly labeled it, Unit 17. Gerald doesn't even like me." Her laugh was soft this time, but genuine. It startled him more than her sudden arrival had. For a moment, the outpost didn't feel quite so lonely. The rain on Esterion 6 did not fall like the rain of Earth. It wasn't gentle, wasn't cleansing. It fell in sharp metallic needles, pattering against rooftops and walkways as though the planet itself had decided to practice percussion. The sky glowed with a dull green haze from the thick atmosphere, and the air smelled faintly of ozone mixed with industrial grease, a smell that stuck to clothing, hair, and memory. He had grown used to it. Or at least, he told himself he had. The truth was, no matter how long he stayed here, he still twitched every time the rain hit the windows with too much force, like he was under attack from an army of caffeinated drummers. On this particular night, the drumming was louder than usual, and the neon signs of the market below flickered as though they too were irritated by the storm. Inside his cramped quarters above the market, the lights buzzed with nervous energy. A single heater glowed dimly in the corner, overworked and underpaid. He sat on the floor with a half-dismantled scanner spread out before him. Tools clinked against metal as he worked, humming tunelessly, occasionally swearing when he dropped a screw into the mess of parts. "Honestly," he muttered, tightening a wire, "why do scanners even need screws this small? It's like the manufacturers wanted me to lose them. Probably part of some galactic conspiracy. Make the screws tiny, force people to buy new scanners. Typical." A voice, soft but edged with curiosity, drifted from the other side of the room. "You speak to the objects as if they can hear you." He glanced up. She was there again, though, again, wasn't exactly accurate, since she hadn't left since she first appeared at his door 2 weeks ago. She sat curled in the battered chair by the heater, legs drawn up, her long ears twitching at every sharp sound the storm made against the building. Her cloak hung off one shoulder, and her luminous eyes reflected the neon glow leaking through the window. "Of course I talk to them," he said, waving his screwdriver like it was proof. "If I don't, they get offended and stop working entirely. The coffee dispenser, for example. If I don't compliment it, it spits steam at me. Machines are sensitive creatures. They like attention." She tilted her head, as if cataloging this strange human ritual. "Machines are not alive." "That's what you think," he said. "But if you've ever had a vending unit jam right when you're starving, you'd know they definitely have souls. Evil ones." Her laugh was quiet, almost like she was afraid the storm might hear it. She hugged her knees closer to her chest. For all her poise, there was still something brittle about her, like porcelain that had been mended but would never be quite as strong again. He tried not to stare too much, because every time he did, he found himself wondering what had driven her to this fringe planet, what kind of exile she was carrying on her shoulders. Instead, he held up the half-repaired scanner. "See this beauty? If I get it working, I'll finally be able to track when the market supply ships come in. No more waiting until the grocer yells at me through the comms that he's sold out of rice again. Technology, my friend. It saves lives. You place much value on rice." "Of course I do. Rice is civilization. You can make fried rice, rice pudding, even rice tea if you're desperate enough. Honestly, if your people don't eat rice, I'm not sure we can be friends." She raised an eyebrow at him, a gesture she had probably picked up from watching his face too often. "We had something similar. Not rice. But it was plentiful. Until it was not." Her words slipped into silence after that, as though she had walked up to the edge of something too sharp to touch. He set down the scanner and leaned back against the wall, stretching his legs out until his boots tapped the opposite chair. "You don't have to tell me," he said gently. "But if you ever want to. I'm a fantastic listener. Terrible at advice, though. My best solution to most problems is, have you tried turning it off and on again?" That coaxed another laugh from her, though this one was tinged with sadness. She lowered her legs, uncurling slowly, and turned her gaze to the rain-streaked window. "You make light of everything," she said. "Even when the world feels heavy." "Someone has to," he replied. "Otherwise, we'd all collapse under the weight. Besides, if I didn't make jokes, you'd have nothing to laugh at, and then you'd just sit there looking mysterious and tragic. And trust me, I couldn't handle that level of drama in my living room." Her ears twitched again, but this time in amusement. She set her mug, empty now, on the rickety table beside her. "Mysterious and tragic," she repeated, the words rolling off her tongue as though she were trying them on. "Do humans admire such things?" "Not me," he said. "I prefer practical and alive." For a moment, the storm outside seemed to fade, the green haze beyond the window pulsing softly like a sleeping heart. Then, almost imperceptibly, she relaxed in the chair, her shoulders sinking, her breath evening out. The brittle edge softened. He watched her in silence, fiddling absently with the scanner just to keep his hands busy. The storm drummed on the glass, the heater wheezed, the lights buzzed. It was the same noisy chaos as always, yet somehow it felt different now. Less lonely. Eventually, she spoke again, voice barely audible over the storm. "I had nowhere else to go." He didn't push her to explain. Instead, he tightened the last screw on the scanner, held it up like a trophy, and declared, "Well, good news. Nowhere else just got upgraded with early warning rice detection. Stick with me, and you'll never miss another shipment of carbohydrates again." Her laughter, soft but unguarded this time, filled the little room like sunlight breaking through clouds. And in that sound, he found a warmth the heater could never give. The cargo bay smelled faintly of machine oil, singed metal, and, unfortunately, pickled kelp. He didn't remember ordering the kelp, but there it was, stacked in translucent crates that pulsed gently with cooling seals. Somewhere in the fine print of the supply manifest, some bureaucrat had decided that every outpost needed essential nutritional diversity. He suspected that bureaucrat had a personal vendetta against him. He kicked the corner of one crate. It hummed back at him in a sulky tone, as if offended. Yeah, he muttered, don't look at me. I didn't ask for you either. Behind him, light footsteps approached, so soft they barely echoed on the metal floor. She had taken to wandering the outpost as if mapping it out with the precision of someone who never wanted to get lost again. Her ears twitched slightly as she stepped into the bay, gaze sweeping over the clutter of drones, cargo, and the ever-growing collection of things he hadn't fixed yet. Your ship smells, she said, nose wrinkling. It's not a ship, technically, he corrected, spreading his arms at the towering stacks of crates and machinery. It's an outpost/junkyard/temporary coffin. And that smell is, he sniffed, grimacing. A personal betrayal from interstellar logistics. She tilted her head, then crouched to peer at the glowing seals on the kelp crates. Her cloak brushed against the floor, and for a strange moment, she looked like an archaeologist examining the relics of a lost civilization. Food? She asked. Technically, he said. Though I'd classify it as a weapon of psychological warfare. Trust me, I tried it once. My tongue filed a formal complaint. She gave a soft laugh and stood, moving with the same quiet grace she always carried, though her shoulders were less tense now than they had been in those first days. She was still cautious, always listening for sounds that weren't there, but she seemed more at ease with him, at least enough to mock his cooking. He dragged a hand down his face and gestured toward the corner where a squat maintenance drone sat in a sulk of its own, its single lens blinking irritably. Meanwhile, Gerald here refuses to move the crates. Says it's against union rules. The drone beeped a negative response, spinning its manipulator arm in what looked suspiciously like a rude gesture. You named a drone? She asked, raising one elegant brow. Of course I did. You can't just yell, Unit 17, across a cargo bay. That's demeaning. Gerald has personality. Gerald has attitude. Gerald also hasn't lifted a single crate in 3 days, but hey, who am I to judge? She crouched again, this time in front of the drone. Her ears flicked as she studied it, her eyes narrowing as though she saw something invisible to him. Then, to his utter shock, she spoke to it, not in his language, but in a sequence of melodic tones, soft and resonant, almost like she was singing. Gerald's lens dilated. The drone beeped once, then spun its manipulator arm again, this time not rudely, but as if testing its joints. Slowly, almost apologetically, it rolled toward the kelp crates and began lifting them one by one. He stared, mouth open. You just spoke fluent drone. She stood, brushing imaginary dust from her cloak. It is not drone. It is machine song. They are simple creatures. But they respond. Machine song, he repeated, dazed. All this time, I've been yelling at Gerald in basic like an idiot, and you're telling me he just wanted to be serenaded? Great. I've been emotionally neglecting my appliances. The drone beeped indignantly. She smiled faintly, her luminous eyes catching the glow of the cargo seals. You are strange, human. But your machines like you. Even if they refuse to admit it. He was still reeling from the sight of Gerald actually doing work when the outpost comms unit crackled to life overhead. The voice was garbled at first, like someone trying to speak underwater, before it snapped into coherence. Outpost Delta 17, confirm status. Repeat, confirm status. He froze, glancing up at the speaker. The comms never lit up unless a supply ship was inbound, and none were scheduled. His stomach did a little flip. That, he muttered, is not a friendly grocer coming to deliver rice. Her expression tightened instantly. She moved closer to him, her cloak brushing his arm. Her long ears twitched like antennae straining for a signal. Not my people, she whispered. But others. Hunters, maybe. Or those who follow trade routes. Fantastic, he said, rubbing his temples. We're about to be invaded, and my only line of defense is Gerald, who just learned to lift things. We're doomed. The comms crackled again. Delta 17, this is Patrol Vessel Targon. Your sector has been flagged for irregular traffic. Prepare for inspection. He groaned. Irregular traffic? What do they think I'm doing out here, running a nightclub? She gripped his arm, her fingers cold but steady. If they find me. They won't, he said quickly, more confident than he felt. You're safe here. Worst case scenario, I'll distract them with the kelp. Nobody survives that stuff. Despite the tension twisting in her eyes, she let out a short, nervous laugh. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring grin, though it probably came out more like a grimace. The cargo bay lights flickered as a shadow passed over the outpost. Engines roared faintly in the sky above, vibrating through the walls. He felt his skin prickle. Okay, he said, clapping his hands together. We've got 10 minutes, maybe less, before the Galactic Neighborhood Watch shows up at my door. Options? Hide you under the floorboards. Pretend you're a malfunctioning refrigerator. Bribe them with pickled kelp. Her serious gaze softened a fraction at his rambling. You are not afraid. Oh, I'm terrified, he admitted cheerfully. But fear and humor share the same neural circuits. If I stop joking, I'll start screaming, and that's not very dignified. For a heartbeat, her hand lingered on his arm, a fragile anchor in the rising storm. Then she stepped back, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders, ears tilting forward as though preparing for battle. The comms chimed again, inspection team deploying. Open your airlock. He swallowed hard. Well, Gerald, time to earn your keep. If anyone asks, we're just humble kelp traders. The drone beeped uncertainly, as if even it knew this plan was terrible. And somewhere in the hum of the outpost, the storm of engines drew closer. The stars looked different when one was finally leaving them behind. He had spent years staring out through the observation deck of the outpost, mapping constellations he pretended to know, inventing names for them when he couldn't find the official ones. The crooked wrench, the double kettle, the drunk octopus. The names amused no one but himself, which had always been fine, because until recently, he had no one else to amuse. Now he found himself pointing them out to her as the shuttle coasted through the dark, away from the dying outpost that had been both his prison and his sanctuary. She sat beside him in the co-pilot's chair, her long ears tilted forward, listening with patient bemusement as he described the shapes only he could see. That cluster looks like a spoon, he explained, drawing in the air with one hand. But if you turn your head sideways and squint, it looks like 2 spoons. Which makes it twice as important. Astronomers would kill for that kind of data. She tilted her head, squinted, and gave him the smallest smile. I see only light. Light is what you make of it, he said with a shrug. If you call it a spoon, it's a spoon. Science is 90% confidence and 10% luck. She laughed softly, a sound that made the shuttle feel less cold. Behind them, the cargo bay rattled with their meager possessions, a crate of tools, a box of rice he'd sworn to protect with his life, and yes, the pickled kelp, which had survived the patrol inspection by being so pungent the officers had nearly evacuated the bay out of sheer self-preservation. Gerald, the ever-sulking maintenance drone, whirred in the corner as if rehearsing complaints for the next crisis. He leaned back, stretching his arms above his head, and let out a long breath. Well. That's it. No more outpost. No more creaky heaters, no more vending machines that hate me. Just us, a half-broken shuttle, and infinite ways to die horribly in space. Her gaze softened. You are not sad. He thought about it. The outpost had been his world for so long. A lonely, humming, leaky world, but still his. He had known every corner, every sound. He had built his life around its silence. And yet, as he stared into the dark where it had once orbited, he realized he felt lighter. "I guess not," he admitted. "Turns out, home isn't the place with the best heater. It's the place where someone laughs at your terrible jokes." She lowered her eyes, her fingers brushing the console. A faint warmth crept across her expression, like starlight filtered through fog. "You have changed," she said quietly. "When I arrived, you were brittle, hiding behind noise. Now, you are softer." "Are you calling me squishy?" he asked, mock offended. "Because I'll have you know, I do at least 6 push-ups a month." Her laugh broke into the cabin, free and unguarded this time. He grinned, satisfied. The navigation console beeped, drawing his attention back to the present. The patrol ships had been shaken, not defeated, and the course they plotted was risky. Still, the shuttle's engines hummed with stubborn life, and for once, he felt like he wasn't just running, he was going somewhere. "So," he said, tapping the screen, "we've got options. There's a trade hub a few sectors over. Big, loud, crowded, plenty of places to hide. Or there's a quiet moon orbiting a gas giant. Hardly anyone goes there, except scientists with questionable hobbies. Probably a better place if we want peace and quiet." She studied the glowing star map. "You would let me choose?" "Of course," he said. "You showed up at my door half frozen, terrified, and demanded warmth. Least I can do is let you pick our next bad decision." Her long ears flicked in amusement. "The hub," she said finally. "If we hide, we will always be hunted. If we are among many, we can vanish." He raised his eyebrows. "Strategic thinking. And here I was planning to choose based on who has better food stalls." "Food stalls," she echoed, tilting her head. "Oh, you'll love them," he said, grinning. "Tiny kitchens on wheels. Spicy noodles, fried dumplings, desserts that clog your arteries in 3 bites. Civilization at its peak." Her smile lingered as she turned back to the stars. He let her enjoy the view, content to fill the silence with gentle jokes and half-truths about the universe. For once, silence didn't feel heavy between them. It felt full. Hours later, when the shuttle finally settled into its autopilot drift, he found himself staring at her. Not at the alien details, the pointed ears, the luminous eyes, but at the way she leaned comfortably into her chair, no longer poised to flee, no longer brittle. She was simply here. With him. He cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. "So, listen. I know I'm not exactly hero material. I'm not strong, or brave, or particularly good at anything except fixing things badly. But if you still want warmth, I'll keep the heater running. I'll keep the rice stocked. I'll keep making stupid jokes until you're sick of them." Her gaze met his, steady and unflinching. "I asked you to warm me," she said. "But you did more. You gave me a place when I had none. A name when I had none. You gave me laughter." He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "That's good. Because laughter is cheaper than heating bills." She reached across the console, her fingers brushing his. The touch was light, almost hesitant, but it carried the weight of every word left unsaid. He squeezed her hand gently, then leaned back with a shaky grin. "Well. Guess that settles it. 2 exiles, 1 terrible shuttle, and a drone with unresolved emotional issues. We're unstoppable." Gerald beeped in protest. She laughed again, her shoulders relaxing fully for the first time since he had met her. Outside, the stars wheeled past, uncaring and endless. But for the first time, he didn't feel small against them. He felt part of something. The shuttle pressed onward, carrying them into a future unwritten. And though he couldn't name the constellation they were heading toward, he decided it looked a little like hope.